Thank you very much. All right, I bet you're on the edges of your seats now waiting to hear about sustainability, right? I see 3 yawns, maybe not. I'll try to take, a potentially dry topic and liven it up a little bit, but it's really an important one. I think we all need to talk about it. It's one of those buzzwords I don't really even like to mention. I sort of just dislike buzzwords, but this one is really important as it pertains to our future. Now, most of the time when you talk about sustainability, I think we're thinking in environmental terms. We need to be green, we need to recycle and whatnot. But the truth is, it's more than that. You have to think about the economic component of sustainability in golf especially. But golf is a game. And so with that in mind, you have to roll in enjoyment. I mean, we forget and lose sight of that fact, I think, sometimes, that the game is supposed to be fun. When you're out there grinding while you're playing or grinding while you're working, it's a game, and it's intended to be enjoyable. So what started the discussion about sustainability? Well, I think there are a series of events. The first one that I think was brought home to me was the environmental movement that really got going in the 1980s, and that was before we had any research to show that golf has a good environmental story to tell. So golf was really under attack, and if you think golf's under attack now, let me tell you, it was a lot worse back in the 80s when we really had no legitimate answer to our detractors. Everybody knows about the economic downturn in 2008. That certainly had a profound effect on how we do things. But really, there was a decline in participation long before the economic downturn in 2008. The other MGA, the Metropolitan Golf Association, shared some numbers with me a short time ago, and play at metropolitan area courses went down by 20% between 1999 and 2007. So that was before the economic downturn hit. Play was in decline. Obviously, plenty of courses nationwide have closed, and others have had to have made the conversion from private to public or accepted daily fee play and that sort of thing. And Adam talked a little bit about the water issue. That's been around for quite a long time in various parts of the country, mostly the West and the Southwest. And the drought in the 1970s really got the USGA to up the ante on the turfgrass research program, and we've had great effect from it. And then there was this comment made by our former president, Jim Hyler, at the 2010 annual meeting: brown is the new green. And that really got a lot of national attention, worldwide attention. People started talking about it. And most of us initially thought, oh my God, he means just turn off the water. Let's let everything go brown and we'll go back to the origins of the game. And I won't say that there wasn't a water component to the rationale behind the statement, because there certainly was. He lives in the Southeast. They had just gone through a horrendous drought in the late 2000s, and his own course had a real issue. So they reworked the irrigation system, got more water efficient, and cut their water consumption dramatically. So that had quite an effect on Mr. Hyler. But the truth is, it reflected more on his concern regarding golf and sustainability, meaning we need to look at all aspects of our game and see how we can become more sustainable. And although golf has lots and lots of wonderful traditions, one of the problems is we tend to rely on legacy thinking, and that's just doing things the way we've always done them, or doing it the same way because we've always done it that way, and getting stuck and not thinking outside the box enough. It's worked in the past, so we're going to keep doing it. Why would we change? And golf has lots of great traditions. We don't want to change some of our great traditions, but we need to look at a lot of different things. I think, in essence, we become complacent. And the world obviously is changing, and the speed of change picks up all the time. Look at what we can do with our computers and our smartphones that we couldn't do 20 years ago. We didn't have them in many cases. So participation obviously down. Pace of play has gone down. That's not necessarily a good thing. That's certainly a huge concern of the USGA. And as we can all attest to, our expenses keep going up. So that sounds like a lot of negativity going on, and I think that's accurate. So those are the reasons I think we all need to think about sustainability. Now here's a chart that the NGF shared with me. But this starts in 2005 and shows rounds, 5 and 6 being pretty steady, and then you start to see the decline in 7 and, all the way down to the bottom in 2013. Annual rounds played annually. Most of us in this room probably knew this already intuitively, and it does follow the economic decline. But remember what I said earlier about rounds in the metropolitan area of New York dropping by 20% in that 8 or 9 year period prior to the Great Recession here. So let's talk about some of these things. First of all, participation. Probably not to anyone in this room, but golf is definitely perceived as being very exclusive by a lot of people. And if you've grown up in the game, if you've played it for a long time, it's not intimidating. You're very comfortable with it. So you have to sort of think outside your own level of experience and think how a new person to the game would consider it. Stand here, don't stand here, talk now, don't talk now, hold the flagstick this way. Oh my God, your shadow is in my line. There's a lot of things to remember, and you don't even think about it. I don't think about it because it just becomes natural. You've been doing it for a long time. I'm sure expense is on your mind because I'm not sure if I've met anybody that really wants to spend more to play golf, so that's certainly a concern. And then the time-consuming issue, that is a real difficult thing for people with young families and busy careers to get over with, to deal with. It is a time-consuming game, and that's a deterrent to attracting new people. And then let's talk about golf's recruiting. Now, there's a lot to be said for the great things that some of the SRGAs are doing, the Met and the MGA, the First Tee program. Lots of great things are doing, but historically golf has been, in my view, a very poor recruiter, particularly of kids and women. And I think of the years that I've spent visiting courses, 26 now with the USGA, I'll tell you, I can probably think of 20 days of those 25, 26 years where I've seen a lot of kids on a golf course. I actually get very excited when I see a lot of kids on a golf course. And I quickly take out my camera, and that makes people very nervous now. I don't know why, but other sports, and I'm talking from personal experience with my own kids, they were recruited to play other sports year-round. If you want to be a good swimmer, man, you're swimming 12 months a year. Baseball, basketball, football, you're either playing the sport 12 months or you're playing it or working out. Golf, historically, the recruiting program at clubs has been 8 weeks of junior golf, 1 day a week, and that's it. And no real provisions to play the game year-round at many, many facilities. So we're not competing with the other sports very well. It's not that we would want to put anybody out of business. We just need to do a better job, I think, of recruiting young athletes and giving them the opportunity to choose golf if they would like to. Everybody knows caddy programs are on the decline, have been for years and years. But that's actually a recruiting source that we've sort of lost. I bet you a good percentage of the people in here came to the game, or at least caddied early in their lives, and came to the game through caddy programs. I visited many courses over the years where green committee members were proud to say, I grew up caddying here, and boy, one of my major goals in life was to become a member at a club like this. And we don't have that anymore because of the decline in caddy programs. So the other thing that's happening is we're losing golfers. As traditionalists, as people that grew up in the game age out, pass away, we're getting non-golfers. And by non-golfers, I'm talking about the people that come to golf later in life. They don't know the history, the traditions. They didn't caddy, so they don't know where to stand, where to put their shadow and whatnot. And so we're sort of going backwards in terms of increasing participation. So we're losing the old golfers, and these are the non-traditional golfers that we're getting. Everybody knows, and probably, the first guy I ever caddied for, I swear to God, was Rodney Dangerfield. It was in Indiana. I don't know how he could have been there, but he said the same things. He tried the same tricks. So participation is a real issue, and we need to address it. And the programs we're doing are great. We just all need to take it up a notch. There are a couple of courses in upstate New York that I visit that have unbelievable junior programs. I'd love to hear stories from you if you have better ones. One of them has 150 kids in their junior program. It absolutely drives the golf course superintendent nuts because 1 or 2 days a week, he can't get anything done because they're like locusts. They're all over the golf course. But I take my camera out and I'm thinking, this is awesome. This is the future of the game. So we need to recruit, we need to teach them, and think about it this way. This is a generational solution. This is not something we can solve right now, because as these kids grow up, they might, migrate away from the game, but hopefully later on they'll come back and get their kids going. So it's not a solution that will produce overnight results by any means. Now here's my tip of the day. Let the little girls play for free, and that way you're going to get more of the little boys coming in. I'm pretty sure that'll work based on the experience of my kids. So to be successful, golf, we've got to do a better job of recruiting, especially kids and women and youth. We also need to create the right culture in golf, and this really holds true, at the maintenance staff level, at the club level, throughout your business as well. Attitudes are contagious, and I think most of you know, if you're in a bad mood, your spouse is going to be in a bad mood, and the kids are going to feel it, and pretty soon everybody's in a bad mood. And this absolutely holds true with golf facilities. I go to some facilities, and boy, we've got one complaint after another. Or complaint is a very polite way of saying whine, so I'll call it complaints, but that's what they are. Yet you go to other courses, and they could have a lot of problems on the golf course, yet everybody's got a smile on their face. And they have made a conscious decision to be positive, to be upbeat, and to come to that facility and have fun regardless of what the conditions are. And that translates and transmits throughout your facility. So creating a positive culture in the game and at your local facility is extremely important in keeping your facility welcoming. We obviously have to control costs. I'm going to transition into that. But while we do these things, we still have to hang on to our traditions, because that makes golf so special. What I'd really like to do is eliminate the overindulgent cosmetics, and I wish I could say I invented this term, but I didn't. It's somebody else coined the phrase, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. But it sounds pretty much, like a piece of cake, right? Not really. There's a lot of moving parts here that we need to address and adjust. So Golf Digest did a wonderful thing a few years ago. They put new language in their rating system, and I'll read it for you, but they abandoned the idea that courses should have lush. That's a 4-letter word in golf. We should not ever have that used in it's really an insult if your course is lush. Green, perfectly uniform grass and they've adopted the position that dry and firm produces the best playing conditions for golf. That's great, but they took it a step further, and this is what I really like. Great conditioning is not striped mowing patterns in the rough or uniform lies in the bunkers. Those are overindulgent cosmetics, and I hope you, if nothing else today, take home this term and start looking at your golf course through different eyes and think about what are overindulgent cosmetics, because we've got them all over the place. I think we can all agree golf costs too much. The challenge, though, is that quality sells. The better your course, typically the more demand there is for golfers to play it. And in turf, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but not really. Smaller and lighter generally translates to better quality in terms of the turf and the playability. And smaller and lighter translates to greater expense. And when I say smaller and lighter, I'm talking about equipment. Smaller and lighter mowing equipment translates to more employees to operate them, more mechanical repair costs and maintenance costs. But if it gives you better turf, you're willing to write the check. So we have to differentiate between what are truly overindulgent cosmetics and what are things that really are important because they give us better turf, better playability, and better reliability with respect to the turf. So how do we differentiate? Well, I think we'll all do it a little bit differently. And I may get some people arguing with me on these points, but I would call flower beds on the golf course overindulgent cosmetics. We have tons of accessories all over the place. I'm not saying we don't need some, but I question if we need as many as we really have. Striping, lush, that is definitely an overindulgent cosmetic. Even consistency, and that's something that USGA really promoted for a long period of time, and it's not really that we'd like you to make your courses inconsistent. We just recognize that inconsistency is a part of golf, and you can spend a lot of money chasing the consistency goal. So how can we adjust? I'm going to just give you a couple of quick things because they're representative of a lot of other things. You certainly could cut down fairway mowing acreage. You could alter your mowing patterns. I'll hit on that. And I would love to see more courses get rid of the intermediate of cut of rough around our fairways. It's unnecessary at most courses. And if you want to read a little bit more about it, this is an article I wrote a year ago. It was in the July 26 issue of the Green Section Record. A waste of time and resources. It'll walk you through why I believe the intermediate cut is exactly that, a waste of time and resources. Generally, you'll see more summer problems with the turf in the intermediate cut. This year, I'm going to bank on it. You're going to see more winter injury in the intermediate cut, probably because there's more POA in the intermediate cut at a lot of golf courses. And it's increased expense, and it results in poor definition. It's harder to see the difference between your fairway and rough when you have this. So I think it's a waste of time at most golf courses. Now, some of you might like the strike mowing patterns. I guess we were all enthralled with it when they were first developed 20 or 30 years ago. But here's a traditional looking older style course, and it's wearing plaid pants. You know, it just looks a little odd to some of us. And now I'm going to ruin your view of courses, because now you're going to start looking at mowing patterns going, oh my God, look at those. He's wearing stripes and checks and plaids. But look about, you know, does it add to the enjoyment of the game? I would argue no. It's totally eye candy. Same course, they switched to the black and white mowing pattern, and they're actually enjoying some fairly considerable savings in labor and fuel costs. Since they're mowing a little bit less often, their equipment will last just a little bit longer. Is this going to, you know, make your budget? No. It's just one little piece, and it's an example of the kinds of things that we can do to reduce costs. This, to me, is the epitome of the overindulgence. That is a rock painted to look like a frog. And I showed this picture a week ago on Long Island, and the green chairman, who happened to be the moderator of the session, was really offended that I brought it out, and proceeded to tell everybody that it was now the bottom of a lake when they did their most recent renovation. But here's the deal. Groups will say, you know, we know you don't have the money for these flower beds, so we'll put them in. We'll plant them. And that works for about a month. And then they start going downhill. They look weedy. They look unkept. And it reflects on the maintenance staff. And they eventually step in, put in the resources to bring them up to snuff. But it's just one of those little things that sucks money away from what's really important. Maintenance down the middle, as Adam described it. You know, bunker maintenance. Adam touched on this. Almost every course I can think of is grooming bunkers less than we did prior to the downturn, and that's a great thing. Certainly not raking them quite as much in the edging and trimming and whatnot. There are other ways to save money there, but really it boils down to, if you have 127 bunkers on your golf course, you're going to be, you know, pretty much locked into spending a lot of money on them. And if money's a real problem, then you may need to look at that number. Of course, the alternative is to get golfers to rake them and then leave the rakes in the shop and just, you know, play them as through the green. One of the other hidden costs I think that most courses have, and I see this every time we do a national championship somewhere. This is a course we had a championship at a couple of years ago. You could almost walk across the bunkers by standing on the rakes. I mean, there were that many rakes in the bunkers. Every time we host a championship, we'll bring in at least a half and oftentimes 2/3 of the rakes on the golf course, because there are just so many, and they're really an impediment to play. They're expensive. So, you know, how much does that increase cost? Well, think about it. Every time you mow around a bunker, if they're on the outside, or every time you rake the bunker, if they're on the inside, the employees have to move them. And it's a lot of extra time. It's just chipping away at your bottom line. I think most superintendents don't really think about accessories except for twice a year. Actually, maybe 3 times, and the third time being when you host a USGA championship. But you think about them in the spring when you put them all out, because it takes forever to do it. Think about them in the fall when you bring them all in. They're everywhere, and we have so many benches, so many ball washers, and with 70 or 80% of the people riding carts, why the hell do we even need benches? I'm not sure about that one. Now, there are some labor-saving, cost-savings techniques. I think this is a very creative one. And as somebody pointed out to me not too long ago, Dave, they do make brown duct tape now, so I'll pass that tip along when I get a chance. So what about firm and fast? There's a lot of talk about that, and gosh, I think I love watching courses play firm and fast. My favorite championships are, the British Open, the US Open, when people are hitting punch shots and running them through and up onto greens and hitting creative shots. I think it's so much fun to watch. I think it's great for the game of golf. If we do it right, it could probably allow us to increase cutting heights on greens. I'll get into green speed and firmness a little bit more in a couple of minutes. And you know what? If we backed off on cutting heights, that would be good for the health of the turf. That would definitely reduce stress. However, when you have really dry turf in our area and you drive a golf cart over it, you're probably going to hurt it, and you might even kill it. So in the Northeast, it's a great thing, but I would not look at this as a way to save a lot of money. As a matter of fact, depending on how you do it, it could cost you more money. And the reason is, for the most part, we're not really paying for our water, or if we are, we're not paying that much for the water. If you're in the Southwest, the West, where you're spending a lot of money on water, in the LA area or in Las Vegas, you might spend $500,000 or $1 million a year for water. Cutting back there, you're dealing with Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass, when you hold off the water, it turns brown. You wait a week, turn the water on, it just turns, comes right back green again. It won't work that way in our area. We're dealing with different grasses, so if they're under drought stress, you walk on them, drive carts on them, you're going to kill them. So it's not really going to save money here. Now, as you sort of transition from the economic into the environmental thing, I think when going back to the 80s, we considered the environmental movement a problem. We were on the defensive, golf was. But the truth is, it's one of the best things I think that's ever happened to golf, because we're all environmentalists in this room. I certainly am, and I think most superintendents are, and golfers as well. Surveys have shown that. I think golf has done a great job of embracing the environmental movement, and it's helped us put more nature back in our golf courses, and that's been a good thing. And credit is due to golf, and particularly the superintendent associations and golf course, turfgrass associations, because we're very much a self-regulating business. We've done a really good job of doing environmental research and taking the results and plugging them into our daily maintenance programs. It's not that we're perfect, we've got a long way to go, but we're trying to stay ahead of the regulators, and we're trying to do the right thing because it's the right thing, and then we have a better and better story to tell all the time. And that's, we ought to give ourselves a few pats on the back for that. That's a great thing. And as a result, I don't know if there's that much more wildlife on our golf courses, but I think we notice it more now because we are thinking in environmental terms. And some of the things we've done on our golf courses have been terrific for environmental reasons. Here's a good one. 25, 30 years ago, you did not see naturalized stream banks, pond banks, whatnot. 25 years ago, I probably would have said, my God, don't you own a string trimmer? Why don't you cut that down? But through education, through research, we've learned there are a lot of benefits for this. This will preserve water quality, but there's the economic impact as well. You're going to save a lot of money if you're not string trimming these down to the ground every week or two throughout the season. From the environmental standpoint, when you do cut them down, where does all the vegetation go? It goes into the water. It's loaded with nutrients, so that detracts from water quality. And if you do it for long enough, you'll find out that, guess what? You're going to have a whole lot more erosion. And that's really bad for water quality, and it's an eyesore, really, really unattractive. So this is sort of a win-win in my mind. Doing less and doing it differently, it's good for the environment, it's good for the bottom line, and besides that, it's just the right thing to do. So environmental sustainability, I would argue the USGA has been doing it since 1921. That's when the green section was created to do research. We didn't call it sustainability back then, but what really kicked us into high gear was the drought in the 70s in Southern California, and then again the pesticide concerns and their fate concerns in the 80s. This was a picture from the green section record back in the 70s. When the research program got kicked into high gear, and I'll give you a couple of numbers in a minute, it was really about coming up with new grasses and ways of conserving water. And if you don't think it can happen to the Northeast, it really can. This is the Cannonsville Reservoir in upstate New York. Over on the right side of the screen there, these are boats. So this is down about 12 or 15 feet. The last bad drought in the Northeast was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was really, really severe. And it's going to come again. So we do have water concerns in the Northeast. They're certainly not as severe as other areas of the country, but we need to conserve our water and be a good steward of it because it's incredibly important. It's a precious resource. So from 1921 to 1982, USGA spent $1 million on turfgrass research. Since then, we're getting very close to the $40 million mark on turfgrass research. Over 500 projects around the country have been funded, and through these programs, we've done a lot of good. We've figured out what happens to nutrients and pesticides when they're applied. We've developed best management practices, certainly developed tons of better grasses that require fewer inputs and whatnot. We've worked hard and continue to do so on water use technology. I think we've encouraged environmentally responsible management, and I think we've highlighted the benefits of that. And as a result, all these things I think have been moving in the right direction. We're more environmentally sound than we ever have been. We've gotten some really good press. National Geographic mentioned our work a few years ago. And at the USGA, we reach out to environmental organizations on a regular basis, and if they don't know what we're doing, they are, to an organization, absolutely shocked and thoroughly impressed when they find out how much money we're spending on turfgrass research and how good a story golf has to tell. They just need to hear it more. The problem is, the typical golfer wants a lot of those overindulgent cosmetics. The four-letter lush word. Certainly don't want any brown grass because brown is, sort of by definition bad. And always want fast greens, but not so much firm greens. And then we want consistency, and we want all these things because TV teaches us this is good. This is, what they want. And, in defense of the tour, their attitude is people want to see birdies. 59, somebody shoots a 59. You may not like it if they shoot a 59 in your course, but that is worldwide news, and that's good for sponsorships. The trouble is a lot of these are indulgent cosmetics, and in general, tournament golf just isn't really sustainable. And I'll tell you, our championships certainly are not. We have tons and tons of volunteers, lots of loaner equipment. We're trying to produce extreme conditions to identify national champions, et cetera, et cetera. Although we do not put a premium on consistency, it does give people an unrealistic view of what the game should be. We know at the USGA, and here's some of our philosophies, we know bunkers can't be consistent. We've actually checked firmness after raking, found one level of firmness, and then once one player hits a shot from a bunker, guess what? The firmness changes. I guess that's a big duh, right? If you hit a shot, you disturb the sand, you rake it, you're going to change the firmness. So bunkers, by definition, cannot really be consistent. We don't want roughs to be consistent. When we have a championship, particularly the big ones, the expensive ones, we won't ask you necessarily to make things inconsistent, but we will absolutely ask you not to fertilize, not to overseed, and make things consistent. We like putting an element of doubt in the mind of golfers. It gets them out of their comfort zone. At Pinehurst, this is going to be such a cool couple of opens here this spring. You're going to see inconsistency in their roughs. I think you'll see inconsistency in their fairways. They've purposely gone back now, meaning, mind you, this is Bermuda grass. They've gone back to a single row irrigation system. So the center line of every fairway at Pinehurst will be the most evenly irrigated, and water applications will get progressively more uneven as they get out to the perimeter of the fairways and non-existent in their sandy waste areas. They've actually taken out 40 acres of irrigated, fertilized turf and put back sandy waste, which is what it was back in the 30s and 40s. So even in the fairway, you're not going to necessarily see consistency at Pinehurst unless it rains, and then unfortunately you probably will see it. But as I mentioned a minute ago, the goal is get golfers out of their comfort zone. Give them varying conditions, put in uncertainty in their head, vary the setup, give them options, and make them make decisions. That's a really, really effective way to test them. And why? I think Alistair McKenzie wrote this darn near 100 years ago. I think this pretty much sums it up. It's possible to have too high a degree of perfection If we've never had a bad lie, we're not likely to appreciate a good one. And moreover, the ability to play from a bad lie differentiates between a good player and a bad one. That's the philosophy. So I would say that we're, to a large extent, our own worst enemy. The current model is cut low, cut off, and roll a lot, keep the turf really weak. That gives us speed. And we've become incredibly skilled at keeping weak grass alive. The problem is, if this is your model, what are you developing? Weaker and weaker grasses. The more you maintain like this, you select for more of the weaker grasses, which results in a lot of unreliability. When you have the bad summer or perhaps the bad winter, a lot of those grasses may fade away. And it requires a lot more inputs. It's obviously more expensive. But unreliability, to me, that's the big one. There's a lot of golf courses in the Northeast region that could shut down regrass and cut the inputs dramatically. Fairways, maybe by 50%, maybe by 60%. So let's talk about speed versus firmness. We've heard speed mentioned how many times today? Everybody's talking about the stimp meter reading. Golfers understand that. They identify it. 10 is better than 9, 11 is better than 10, 12, ooh, now you're really getting good. It's not a measure of quality. It's just a measure of speed. And if you gave us a choice at our championships of two things, speed or firmness, I can tell you we would take firmness every single time. Golfers value speed very highly, and it's not unimportant. It's just that speed is not nearly as important as firmness. And the reason is simple. There's a lot of lousy golfers that can handle fast greens. Maybe you are one, you certainly know some. There are no lousy golfers that can handle firm conditions. So it's really a much better way of sorting out the competition and finding out who's the better player. So wrapping it up, golf has a ton of challenges. I think all sports do. I'm glad I'm not with the NFL today because I think their challenges are a lot more daunting in many respects than ours. I think we have to remember what made golf great. It is a wonderful game for your lifetime, but I do think we need to think outside the box as we address all of these different issues. We need to do a better job of recruiting, and gosh, I'd love to see us eliminate more of those overindulgent cosmetics. And with, as always, whatever you do on the golf course, you must always think about the environmental impact. And I say this not lightly, don't ever break the law. Bad news sells, and one course makes one mistake, whether it's an accident or on purpose, something bad happens, we have negative consequences, that will sell worldwide. Golf is obviously a very global game, and bad news will go global just as quickly as actually more quickly than the good news. So never break the law. And with that, I'll say thank you. Not sure where we stand on our time. Tom?
Yeah, good.
We good? Got it. Thank you. That was a 45-minute presentation that I did in less than 45. So, any questions? Anybody comment, argue? Got a pet frog rock at home that you're a little embarrassed about now? All right, thank you.
Thank you.